So we're here with Sajam. We got some chess. We got a chessboard in front of us. For those who don't know, he's going to be facing off against ESAM. I didn't even think about this when you and I were doing our pre-prep. What are we going to do over the next couple hours?
Oh, you're
we
a
could do some
fan
specific
now?
prep for ESAM.
That is a good idea. I didn't think about that. I forgot chess is like a nightmare for fighting game players because the fact that you can just go look at anybody's match history at any time and see every move they've ever made, like you can't escape from somebody just knowing your every move. I think that's like so interesting.
All right, so my producer just hit me with his username, which is I'm ESAM. So he's also been grinding. He's got a lot of 10-minute games here.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was a cheater because I thought he was as new to chess as I was. And I realized like the team he's on, they did a chess event. But I still feel like, you know, despite not understanding chess very well, I don't think anybody knows it so well in like the event that it should be a problem. Is like the way I look about it. Like looking through most people's stuff.
That is 100% the right attitude. This is not to either like blow smoke or degrade, either way, depending on your interpretation of what I'm about to say. Like, but the truth is, anybody from like 0 to 1200 is capable of being the best player in like any game, because there's still a level of concepts and blunders that are made. And I think if people like find their groove where they focus, maybe all they focus on in one game is like, what was my opponent's threat? If you can get a mantra or like a principle of, don't ever forget to ask, why did my opponent go there? Why did my opponent go there? Like if you can do that while you're doing your laundry, bro, and your dishes, and just like ingrain, look at your opponent's threats, you are instantly in some games 200-300 points better. So chess is like fundamentally at its core a game of like thinking about the consequences of your actions before you do them, not like after the fact asking for forgiveness, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it's funny because I think fighting games are the same way where I constantly have to tell people, hey, you know, you're new at fighting games. You shouldn't worry about like this super advanced technique or like this player is so much better than you that they can never be defeated. When you're new, like anything can happen. You know what I mean? It's like a very like kind of wild westy feel to what can go on. And like that's basically exactly why I approached it in this way. Cause I was like, you know, I don't think anybody is like so absurd that there will be some kind of gap where like they're just undefeatable.
That's awesome, man. And a lot of times with like coaching lessons, like we can start diving into your openings and we'll do that. Maybe you can play some, maybe you'll want to play some people from your chat because like sometimes people like that and then you and I can go over it. But for this, I'm going to invite you to a couple new boards. The first game I pulled up of his was a game against someone who played D4, but then I was looking at your openings and you tend to play E4.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's not waste time with that. Let's dive right into what he does. And in this game, he plays the Pirc, which is D6 on move 1. Before I give you a bunch of prep on how to beat the Pirc, I want to make sure I'm not giving you like wasted advice. I want to make sure he actually plays this consistently. So I'm going to go look into that. So have you ever faced this?
No, but the first thing I would do here is just defend my pawn with the knight, because when I look at this, my first thought is that he's probably planning to either move the queen or the bishop and then like attack the center of the board with those. So that's what I would just do, is just defend the pawn. Because if I usually don't know what's happening, I usually just try to develop to the center.
So what I would say though is this, actually, whenever you face an opening that gives you the center, like you should often take it like as soon as you can. D4 on move 2 is the most popular. Your opponent, like Sam, is probably going to play knight to F6. And now that the pawn is being attacked, now you'll actually want to play knight to C3.
I see. So it's better to, in this case, to just take the center and then be reactive off the knight move rather than just do it assuming he's just going to attack the pawn.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And the idea in the Pirc here is that once you have the center, probably the most aggressive development you can take is the right idea. And that can change based on what they're going to do. But let's actually look at what he did in his game versus this guy, and you'll kind of see what he does. So after knight F3, knight F6, knight C3, so he does play a normal Pirc, which is this move G6. And the idea of that is to fianchetto the bishop and get castled. Have you ever faced a fianchetto?
No, but it's just the long diagonals, right?
Yeah, just putting the bishop there. So let's see, what did this guy do after that? He did play D4. And then play D5. So this is the idea that you would like to go for, but this guy did it too early, and Sam is able to trade the queens. And now this E5 pawn opening the center wasn't as good as it could have been because it's kind of a target rather than an asset, right? The bishop attacks it, and they're going to bring this bishop out to attack this knight, which undermines the protection of the pawn here.
I see, yeah.
But I want to give you advice that's applicable for your game. So what I'll say is E5 itself is an idea you want to look for once you're tactically ready to do it. So a good move is just bishop to C4. If we were to take a snapshot of this position, like just so you visualize a goal, like this is a great starting position. Big center, Knights developed, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And after castles, in a lot of positions now, you are threatening to play e5, which can cause a lot of problems. Like even if, just to give a random example, even if they trade queens now, it's already much better for you because you can take with the rook and own the file.
Right.
And there's lines like this where the knight has to move. And if you immediately look to put a piece in the center, you're actually winning potentially material right away, forking these pawns here. I know I'm going a little fast, it's advanced, but we'll back up and look at it because we'll be able to break it down in concepts that you feel like you can, take away, like the pattern. I feel like I can speak pattern to like a fighting game community guy because
yes,
I bet you don't remember buttons in terms of like one at a time. You remember them in like sequences, like a phone number.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I'm sure chess is the same way where like as you become experienced, like when in the beginning you're like, wait, what's happening here? What do I do with my pieces? Like what's happening? And then you see this and you don't think, oh, that's a weird pawn move. You think, oh, this is the Pirc defense? You're like, oh, it's the Pirc. Yeah. Okay, so I should play this and then this and then this and then this, right? It's the same thing as fighting games where in the beginning you're like, wait, this combo is like 10 different things. I have to hit this button and then this button. And then I could just be like, hey, thanks Swagmaster69 for the sub on Twitch. And I'm just like doing the combo without looking at the screen, So like, yeah, it's the same kind of idea.
So conceptually, like, how do we break this down so we can remember? We're back to the beginning position now, right? You can see that. So one concept, number one, opponent gives you the center, you should take it. Take it and then defend it, because just like the fundamental starting points of chess are the pieces that have more options will get better tactics. And the most options you have on the board come from the center. So even though the Pirc is an opening, and yes, there is a strategy to try to undermine this advantage at some point, you should still just take it. And especially at beginner levels, like I don't actually recommend a lot of my students to start out with some openings like that, because if someone knows what they're doing, they can get in trouble very quickly. And so first thing is grab the center, and then we're going to defend it with knight to c3. And after g6, one of the main ideas is probably the best line against the Pirc is actually the Austrian. But that's kind of a big move to memorize, because f4 is also very risky in that it opens up the dark squares to your king, which isn't something I want to advise like at this level. But conceptually, I'm pointing it out because it helps reiterate why is it a good move, even if we're not going to recommend it, is because it's all about strengthening the grip of this e5 break. Yeah. Eventually, you want to control the dark squares to take advantage of the big center they gave you. So even if you don't play f4, I like showing that idea because it helps reiterate the philosophies that we're going for in other positions too. And that's the thing about chess is like half the time you're not going to get the exact lines we go over in this lesson, or even that you prepare, even at the highest levels, but you will get ideas that are same. You will get pawn structures and formations that are similar. And so people who try to memorize chess move by move put themselves in rabbit holes they can't get out of. But if you try to memorize concepts and structures, this is the idea. And I think knight f3 is just the simplest way to play, get developed. They're going to play bishop g7, and because we already saw that Sam did that in another game. And now, unlike the guy who played e5 against him, I would say just play bishop c4 and get an active bishop in the center. So now, likely he'll castle. This is the best move, and you'll get castled, and you're already ready to start doing damage here with e5. So
I'm guessing in this, you basically always are going to end up like taking the center and then trading queens.
Yeah, you may not trade queens depending on what he does here, because there's a lot of moves that can happen here. Like knight bd7 is sometimes a move they'll play, because this formation of the knights working together to prepare dark square breaks is a common idea. But in this position would be a good example of when it's already too late, because you now know the e5 idea. You would punch through, shake and bake, and when the knight moves, you actually punch again. And this position is actually already like getting horrible for black. Something like this, by the way, note the knight is actually pinned. If it moves, you win the queen for free. So takes, and you would start doing things like knight g5, and you're gonna wreck. You're not gonna get that against Sam, especially if he watches this stream, but it is good to note the tactics. What can they do that helps stop this? Well, there's a number of things. One of the moves is a move like bishop to g4. If they try to develop and pin the knight, because this knight is a supporter of this center that we love. But even in a position like this, you also have good options already. Like, one of the things to know about chess is that the bishop pair is an advantage for you often in most games, meaning you have two bishops and they only have one.
I see. Okay.
Take a guess as to why you think that might be. Why is the bishop pair, like versus a bishop and a knight, for example, a better duo?
Probably because they just cover more squares, or they can like attack together to cut off space on the board diagonally.
Yeah, 100, well said. And the main other reason is that it's much harder to dictate a position and keep it closed than it is to let it become open. And the bishops thrive in the open board.
Right, yeah.
So most chess games, even at the highest levels, will eventually become open because people will trade pieces. And it's like very strong players can dictate a game and keep the board closed where the knights can thrive and you know, switch colors and maneuver and hop around. But most of the time, a position will become open. So often the earlier you get the bishop pair, the more you're just like, you know, I came to party, right? Like I'm going to open up the position and just like let tactics happen. So the earlier you get the bishop pair, if they play a move like bishop g4 and you play h3, often the better.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When is your match against Sam, by the way? Like when is...
Friday, I think afternoon.
So we don't have a ton of time, but let me so use the left side nav on my stream. We're also doing full screen, and go under learn, and go to explorer. So on the right side, instead of master games, click the drop down and click other players toward the top.
Yeah, other players. I'm guessing I'm typing in I'm ESAM.
So you've already got it. Against E4, he's played. So click E4. He's played 62 games against E4.
Oh man, yeah.
So you click E4, and now let's see what he's played. Almost all the time he's been playing D6. So this proves that we're looking at things that are worth our time. So now let's click D4 as our second move, because that's the move I want you to play.
Right.
And then he'll play knight F6 most of the time, looks like. You'll play knight to C3, just like I was telling you to do. And then he'll play G6.
Yeah.
And now we see the knight f3, which is the move I was telling you, has been played 9 times against him. He's faced bishop c4. He's actually faced the best line, f4, which is the Austrian down there, one time. He won that game, but, you know, again, depending on his opponents, maybe they don't know what to do. Because what's funny is if you look up this position, just like master games, f4 will be the most popular move in this position in the ECO, which is chess terminology for Encyclopedia of Chess Openings. Knight f3 will be a close second. So let's go with the move I'm telling you to do, knight f3, and let's see what he did. Bishop g7.
Yeah.
Now let's play bishop c4, our move, and he cackles, and we cackle. It's all good. And look at that. I was right. He played knight bd7 in a game. Man, if he plays this, I'm going to be like a freaking prophet. I'm coming for you down in there, Aditsky. I'm going to be a prophet. Nobody clip this to him, guys. No one clip this to him. If he plays this, you're going to play e5. By the way, so before you make any moves on the board, you see that he faced this, but his opponent didn't know what to do. His opponent played bishop g5. But you're not going to play bishop g5. You're going to play e5 on the board and freaking smash him. Black is already like losing in this position if you play e5. It's
pretty funny because I think to me as like an inexperienced chess player, what he did with the knight there is maybe what I would do too. It kind of like makes sense in my brain why he would do it.
Right. Well, conceptually, it's also what I was saying is let me explain why, because this is important in case he does watch this stream or he learns like what to do. If you back up a move, the point of his idea is he wants to play e5 and c5. Those are the moves that you look to do in a Pirc because they undermine the dark square center and they help that bishop on g7, that fianchettoed bishop, become a beast. That's the concept. But a lot of players play it sort of carelessly, not realizing that if white really knows what to do with like an e5 break, that they're not actually getting the kind of stuff they want. And so now back up the arrow again before he played knight d7. And let's give him the benefit of the doubt, because it looks like in another game he did play e5, and this is a good move to be aware of. So you're going to play d takes e5, take it. This was also a bad thing for him to do, by the way, but it's conceptually, there's a pattern here that's important to know. In fact, to the board I just invited you to, go ahead and play e4 on the board. I want you to play white, that I'm going to play black, so you can practice the line I'm teaching you. Boom. Look at you. You got the memory of a fighting game player, player.
Yeah, you make it. The thing is, I'm going to make it like 4 moves in and then be like, okay, what was it? Like that's always how it goes. So yeah, it's develop the bishop next, or is it the knight?
Knight typically before bishops, and that's actually a very old school chess principle that we don't use that much in modern chess commentary or modern chess understanding, because theory is a term we use to describe what's considered theoretically best. So like in the fighting game community, I bet there's like theory like this particular character is better against this particular person because of the, I don't know, that's interesting. Anyway,
yeah, we have theory that's on paper. That's what we say. We say on paper this character should be like, you know, advantage, or this character, but like in actuality, it's too hard. Yeah.
In chess, we use the term theory, and like what's considered theoretically best is what we would say. Chess theory these days is super concrete because computers are so good. They're better than all humans. And so people don't think in terms of like principles that guided chess in the same way because it's concrete or it's not, right?
Right.
But on a principled level, which is really what most people should be focused on, and unfortunately they don't. They focus on what the computer says, but it's like a kid looking at the answers to a math book in the back without learning like how to approach like an algebra equation, right? So like if your chat cares about getting better, I definitely advise focusing on principles and like doing lessons and stuff like that. But theoretically, bishop c4 is fine, but knight f3 is better. It's almost always to put your knights in the center first. Depending on what they do, if they do like weird things, your knights are typically more effective pieces immediately in the opening. And the bishop has different options. Like it might go here, it might go here, it might go here. Whereas also another reason knights come before bishops is because the knights at the start don't have as many good options. Like putting a knight on the edge is almost never a good idea. It gets taken and it doesn't do anything. So a lot of people don't understand why Nimzovich and all the classic chess theoreticians said the concept knights before bishops. The reason is that bishops tend to have more options, and they don't always tend to know their best square until the pawn structure becomes clear. I actually have not taught that chess principle of knights before bishops in a long time, so you just brought it out to me. That was awesome. All right, so bishop g7, and now you bring your bishop out. Rekharovka, which is Russian for castles.
Man, you have 900 ways to say castle. It must get boring just saying castles, I guess.
Dude, when you talk about chess for so long, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. Make ugly look good, man. Make boring look interesting. So what we just reviewed, and I'll have you play white. So punish me for this move, knight b to d7.
Yeah, we pushed the pawn, right?
Boomtown.
And then, it's takes.
Takes, and this is bad. I'll play it and let you play the next move to really make sure you understand why it's so bad for me. Booyah. Takes. What's funny on takes, you could probably actually play an even better move than bishop takes e6 here. I showed you bishop takes e6 check because it was like the coolest. I actually think knight g5 is probably the most accurate because that actually threatens to take e6 with the knight and fork the queen and the rook.
Queen and the rook, yeah.
So that's actually kind of funny. But okay, either way, you're doing great, and we'll back up. So let me show you the whole point of e5. What they're hoping for is that after takes, and takes, they have what's a very well-known discover tactic in both the Pirc and the King's Indian setups, which is this move knight takes e4. They take the pawn right back and sacrifice a whole piece because they win it on e5. They win it back.
Right.
And so what's happened when all the smoke has cleared here, the gunfire is gone, Black has gotten the better of this equal trade because you've liberated this bishop on g7 to be on a very strong diagonal. And the open center favors that fianchetto bishop because of its targets. It's harder for white to develop the bishop because of b2. The bishop is strong here. The dark squares are actually like in black's control. Objectively, the position is about equal. The computers will say close to 50-50, but it's what black kind of wants. The problem is this. Even in this game when he played e5, it actually should not have worked because in this position, his opponent missed something, which is he could have taken on d8 first, traded queens, and then taken e5. And now what are you threatening in this position that prevents them from taking on e4?
That is a great question. What am I threatening? I don't know, actually. I guess. Can you use the knight to, take the pawn on f7?
100%. Very good. The knight and bishop hit f7. And so if you take here, I mean, probably white's actually just winning in multiple ways. Just knight takes first is probably best. Like you hit the rook, you threaten discovered check, and their knight is actually still on pre over here, meaning it's under attack. So you're just winning material. If they take here, you take with check, and then you're going to take the knight back. So you're actually up a whole rook.
Yeah.
If they move the rook, you can move the knight to like a discovered check, and then you're going to win the rook. You could even take first and then go here where they can give up the rook for the bishop. But in the end, again, you're winning a lot of material pretty much no matter what. So this is a concept where he seems to be lacking a little bit about what to do in this particular position. So again, as long as none of your chat betrays you and shares this clip, you should be really well prepared.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Batcave.
Okay.
So look at this. He does also play e5 on move 2. If you want to click on that. So go ahead and play e4 for you. And then let's see what he does when he plays e5, just because that is actually what I would teach a player of his level and your level to play, like as far as the most classical way to like start learning chess theory. So what do you play against e5? Like what's your opening here?
I usually play, wow, they played this knight. Yeah, this is usually what I do too. I usually just play the knight to attack the pawn, and then they usually defend with their knight the pawn.
Okay, yep, and that's what he's played 9 times.
Yeah.
So now let's see. Look what he's faced. He's faced bishop to c4, knight to c3, and bishop b5. So what would you normally play here?
I would usually play the knight.
Okay, so just knight to c3.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. And let's stick with that because right now I don't think you should go away from anything you don't know. I would say that this is a good example where modern chess theory has kind of outdone the idea of knights before bishops. Typically, I would say that instead of knight to c3, bishop to c4 and bishop to b5 are they're both theoretically a little more challenging. Like the Ruy Lopez is bishop to b5 and the Italian is bishop to c4. But knight to c3 is the 4 knights, and it's a very, very good opening, super solid. So let's stick with that and see what he does. So go ahead and play knight c3 on your screen, and then he'll play bishop to c5 because it looks like that's what he's played a couple times. So this is actually awesome if he does this. You ready for me to give you some magic sauce?
Yeah, magic sauce sounds lovely, yeah.
Now we're going to learn a common tactic known as the center fork. The move here that is theoretically super popular is the move knight takes e5 for white. You sacrifice your piece temporarily. His knight's going to take it. And he's never faced it, we can see. And now you're going to play d4. You fork the knight and bishop right back.
I see.
Back. Here are his options. If he takes on d4 with the bishop, he's giving you the bishop pair. We've talked about that. You take back with the queen. So go ahead, let's say he takes your pawn with his bishop, you take with the queen. And now you've got your queen in the center. And we've already said, like, the bishop pair is better. So even if you don't get anything better from here and he plays well, your natural move should just be develop your bishops, like your bishop on f1, get castled, and you're going to have a good middle game because you've got very, very good active pieces. But he can even make more mistakes. I've seen positions where this just goes way downhill. They play a move like you're attacking their knight on e5 with the queen. So they move the knight to safety with knight to c6 to attack your queen. Like they retreat the knight. And now you can play the move queen takes g7, a pawn on g7 for free, which is French for free.
I see, yeah.
The other way it could go is they could move the knight immediately when you played the move d4. So back up a couple moves with the arrows. Instead of him taking with the bishop, if he moves the knight to some square, you're just going to take the bishop back on c5 and win your piece back. The most exciting way that this game can go, if you back up one more move, actually 2 more moves, the craziest move they can play here is this move bishop takes f2 with check, because this is the one that they think is just awesome. They think this is like crushing because they make your king move in the middle of the board.
Right.
So they take on f2 with check, you take with the king, and then they take the knight. Material is equal, but they've made you move your king. The problem is that this position is actually just better for white, like clearly better. You play the move d4. Now, not only do you have the bishop pair, your bishop's on c1 and f1, you actually have a huge center after you played the move pawn to d4 to kick their knight. And you're going to get castled, what we call is you're going to get castled by hand. So they move the knight to some square.
Sure.
And your bishop on f1 can now develop to even just a safe square like e2. Your next move is going to be to slide the rook over to f1 and put your king on g1.
I see.
So that's what it means to castle by hand. Now, they can give a check. If you back up, when you played the move pawn to d4, the most popular move is knight g6, as I was showing, though this is already good for white. But they can also play the move queen to f6 check. You just play king to g1. You tuck that king to safety. They move the knight to g4. This is a wild line. I'm kind of having fun here. I hope you are, because I haven't. Now, why can't you take that knight on g4 with your queen?
That's a great question. Is it because his queen can take on f1? I guess not, right?
Not f1, but another square, which is really key. Dreams are shattered if we don't know what to do here.
Oh, so I guess the pawn as well.
Now visualize that. This is good for your chess training overall. Forget the opening. So visualize queen takes g4, you take their knight, and they take your pawn on d4. What is that position after they take that pawn with check? They're checking your king on g1.
Yeah, that is like super bad, right? I don't know. I have to like sack my bishop or something, right, to defend the king.
But then they just take your bishop, and then what is it?
Yeah, it's just checkmate, right?
Right. So crazy. You can actually lose in 9 moves. But the thing is, you don't do that.
Right.
You play the move that is kind of awkward. You play this move queen to d2. You move your queen up 1 square. And what's funny about this line is it's been super scary and they almost checkmated you, but you're literally a couple moves away from just like getting a huge advantage. You're going to play the move pawn to h3 to attack their knight. You're going to kick their knight from that square. You're going to develop your bishop on f1 out to a move like c4 or something. You're also threatening the move knight on c3 to d5, which would fork the queen on f6 and the pawn on c7. In chess, we balance a couple things. There's like the temporary and the permanent. And the temporary tricks here for black were actually very dangerous. Like your king was in trouble because they got a check, and they had this like, you know, this checkmate threat where if you took the knight, they were going to checkmate you. But the permanent features of this position greatly favor white. You have the bishop pair. You have bishops on c1 and f1. You have two huge pawns in the center. And actually, they've wasted a ton of time moving their pieces multiple times, moving this knight all over the board, and the queen. When you play knight to d5, you're going to be attacking them even more, which gets really, really frustrating. And so the point is, this center fork is actually a very common way for white to get a big advantage in the opening against I would say, a lot of players below the 1400 level, because they don't know how to evaluate that position where white has a huge center and a long-term advantage, and they thought they were winning because they took that pawn on f2 with check and made your king move. I see your chat is hella lost right now, LMAO.
I think in my chat, everybody who's very confused, the important thing to understand is that, you know, sometimes like when it comes to stuff like this, you look at it and there's all these options and you're like, whoa, what am I supposed to take in? But the important thing is you don't have to take it in immediately, right? It's not like you just absorb it and you know it and like, you know, it's just immediate. You don't build Rome in a day, right? It takes time to go over it again and then think about it. And if you think about a fighting game, I'm sure you realize it's the exact same way.
All right, I just invited you to a new board. Go ahead and make a move on either one, Sajam 1 or Sajam 2, whichever. Just make your e4 move.
Sure.
Now I'm going to practice e5, which is the other thing he might do. So go ahead. So let's say he plays knight to c6.
Yeah.
Knight to play your move, and then bishop to c5, and this is where I taught you the crazy trick. So not right away, because here he can take it with the pawn,
right?
And he's got more defenders than you do attackers, right? Like if you keep taking, that's not good chess math, right?
No, yeah.
So the key is the trick before you play d4.
It's the knight takes, right?
Nice.
Yeah,
exactly.
The knight takes.
Boom. So let's say I take with the knight,
and then you do it, yeah.
Nice. If I take here,
then I take with the queen.
Yeah. So let's say I move my knight to a bad square.
And then I'm trying to remember. Is it the bishop next, or is it the...
Well, think about what I'm attacking, right? Like our number one thing we're going to take out of this, and I'm going to remind you at the end, is why did he go there, right? Every move, what are they literally threatening?
Yeah.
And I think, so he's attacking your queen, right?
Yeah. So, it was like the queen can like dive onto g7, right?
Yep. Go for it. Sometimes we get confused, or we lose the habit of why did they go there, because human nature is like, you think you're looking at something new or something that's more important. But again, like you have to always start with the literal question, like, why did they go there? Because before we even decide if something is good or bad, that implies bias.
Right.
And as we get better at things, our bias tends to improve. Like we tend to know why things are good or bad. But in the beginning, and I like to go back to this conceptually with even students that I have that are like much better or much more experienced than you, I say like, look, before you apply your own subjective bias, literally count the squares that somebody is moving to. What are they actually doing? And it's so funny that even at the highest levels of chess, a game cannot be lost without missing what our opponent was trying to do. It may not be a one-move blunder, but essentially a game is lost because someone misunderstood, underestimated, misevaluated a concept that their opponent was executing on.
Yeah.
So it's important because I think when we start with that fundamental point, you build chess muscles faster than you think you can.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it the right way. Because what were you trying to do when you first saw knight to c6? You were doing the thing a lot of people do. You were trying to do what I always called, when I was really coaching a lot, was you're trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Like you're trying to like remember something magical. Like was it the bishop? Was it the king? Now you're like in this, like just think about what our brain wanted to do. You're in an abstract world. Start with the literal things of what they did, and you will get much faster on the right path. Right?
I'm a student of a new fighting game quite often, and I think what you said about the learning experience being like, oh, you have to evaluate what your opponent is doing all the time. Fighting games are oftentimes, you ask people like, hey, why are you doing that? And they're just like, well, I don't know. It just seemed like maybe I should, I don't know. And like, I'm like, if you can't answer the question why you're doing something or what your opponent's trying to accomplish, then like, you know, you're not even thinking about the game in a way that will start the path to improvement, right? You're just like, I guess I want to hit him. I did a bunch of like viewer match analysis, and one of the first things I told everybody was to move with purpose, right? Every time you move or you're doing something or you do anything in the game, there should be you should have a justification, even if you're wrong, right? And like what you end up doing is not.
I love that you just said that. That is such a chess concept that I have try to explain to people. So it's so much better to have had a critical thought and be wrong than to have none.
If you're just like, oh, I'll just do this. And like, even if I would rather you try and be wrong than just do something and then you lucked into the right move, because long term, those things do not equate, right? You need to understand what's happening or you can't make the improvement required to get there.
100%. What I want to give you now is some concepts for the, like, if he doesn't do these concrete things. So we're gonna kind of use this analysis board here to go through a lot of the stuff I've taught you here as white that we're gonna do to his openings as black, and be like, hey, like, because one thing we can't do in this lesson, we're not psychic, we can't anticipate all possible things. Plus, very often, even players who know their openings at this level will make mistakes. So he might even do something that's not that good, but it's different than what we looked at, and you may not know what to do. But because I can't possibly map out all those things, what we tend to do is just make like a conceptual roadmap, right? Like when we used to use physical maps before Siri told us exactly where to go, right? So I'm going to give you like the conceptual, you want to take the 10, to get on the 5, to do this. Generally, you're looking for this exit.
You're speaking to the Californian in me. I like that.
So when you play E4, let's stay with E5 because we're right here. So if he plays his second most popular move and you play knight F3, knight C6, knight C3, if he doesn't play bishop C5 and let you have the fork idea and does like something else, your basic plan, which you probably already know, you play this opening, is you want to develop and get castled and then fight for the center, right? So we can develop this bishop to a number of squares. The best square is actually B5. And fun fact, if you play bishop C4, you potentially leave yourself open for him doing the center fork. Now, he may not know the center fork, but he can actually return the favor back at you. Bishop to B5 is the most common and popular move here. You're attacking this knight who protects the pawn. So generally, they try to defend that pawn. You can get castled. And your goals as white with an extra move are to try to open the center and be aggressive here. If you do that combined with the plan, I'm kind of like, hey, why did my opponent go there? Why did they go there? What are they literally doing, right? Jumping your critical thinking to another level without going too much further down the road, you're going to be on a good path. So this isn't as exciting or sexy as him falling for the traps I'm teaching you. But if he doesn't, you're in a good position and develop your pieces, control the center.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Okay.
The only so my question is, if on bishop to b5, I feel like I've made this move before and someone just attacks me with like a pawn on a6, which like to me, I have no idea why that's good or bad or what I should do if that happens.
Okay, so great point. So the reason I said it too fast, quickly describe what you're doing with like why is bishop b5 the most effective? It's because you're threatening to take and win the pawn. Right. So if they don't defend the pawn and they attack you, what are you going to do?
Just take with the bishop then? Yeah.
Take and win the pawn.
Nice. Okay. So it's worth its equal value there to trade the pieces, even though you're losing a bishop?
It is because you win the pawn. Yeah. So the concept I gave you of the bishop pair being better than the knight or bishop is a good one to kind of like, put in your pocket, right? Little knowledge nugget, trade it for later. Right. It's a good thing, but it's not to be overspent. You don't want to go so far your way to win the bishop pair or save your bishop pair to the point of material.
Sure.
Okay. There are exceptions to what I'm saying, and there are all kinds of brilliant games.
There's always exceptions. Yeah, it's okay.
There are, sacrifices and compensation and great examples where the initiative that the bishops had was worth even more than a pawn, right? But we're not operating in those right now. We're saying your idea is to take and win the pawn in the center, and if he doesn't stop you from doing that, that's what you're going to do. Again, if they protect the pawn instead of letting you win it, castle and look to play in the center. Worst case scenario, you get uncomfortable and you decide like, I'm not going to play here. Even playing D3 with a good pawn chain and then developing your bishop over here is also a good, just solid plan. So I'm giving you kind of roadmaps here, right? And you're going to use your critical thinking to try to piece these concepts together. If you're ever in a closed center, meaning a position where neither pawn, not even one pawn was traded in the middle, by definition, you will have a pawn chain. Because if you think about it, it has to be one or the other. Either something was traded, right, in the center, or one of the pawns is leading and the other one is supporting. In those types of positions, the most natural plan is to swim with the river. And so I'm giving guides that can help you in hundreds of positions here. So what are we saying? We're saying I'm giving you specific opening theory with some traps. Look to open the center where your pieces can do their most damage, as long as you're being aware of your opponent's threats. But if you don't get that, a closed center, I don't care if it's even 100% the most accurate move, because I just want to reinforce the concepts you don't forget. Even if you forget everything else, but remember the tip of, okay, he said swim with the river. That means I'm looking to play on the side of the board where I've got natural lines.
Yeah.
Even if you just move this knight from F3 and look to play a move like F4, where you've got bishop, rook, long distance relationships happening on F4. You've got ideas that the queen is coming out. You've got play on a side of the board where you're structurally supported to do so. Does that make sense? You're attacking like with your lead pawn. So that's a concept that can apply to a lot of positions where people get their pieces out and then go, well, now what do I do? So let's go back. We're going to do some more. I'm going to let you play white again, and we're going to keep doing this.
Okay,
so
cool.
I feel like you've got it mastered for white.
Sounds good.
Okay, so you're playing E4. I'm going to play E5 again. We're going to test you one more time in that center fork. Make sure you've got it memorized. Knight F3, Knight C6, Bishop C5. Sorry, sometimes I switch. I just automatically slip into the gecko from Gecko.
It's fun, man. You know that there was a tournament where someone controlled the voice of the gecko for like a Geico thing, and it was very funny for that reason.
Okay, so now I'm going to do the fun line with check and see if you fall for my checkmate trap.
Yes. Okay. I'm trying to remember what this was. If I remember, we don't take the... Yeah, we go back. And we don't take the knight. Instead, we...
Actually, I never even showed you this. I told you to play the move queen to D2, but why? Let me show your chat. If takes, it's checkmate, and this is a very famous way to lose. But black is actually threatening queen F2 checkmate, so you still have to deal with this problem.
Right. Okay, so that makes sense for why the piece needs to be here, right? To defend that square. Okay, I see.
If you see that little bar to the left of the board, that represents white's advantage, and you know, at the 6th rank, you're looking at advantage that's probably like +2 or 3 for white. In fact, if you hold your mouse over it, you can see that it's +2.93.
I'm always jealous of this bar, because as a, you know, when you do commentary for fighting game events, like you don't have any sort of evaluation bar or anything. It's literally you just being like, well, this position is favored for so-and-so because of this. And you just have to like use your own brain to justify it rather than having the computer. You know, what's so funny is like when we first started bringing the eval bar into our broadcast, initially it was met with a ton of pushback and criticism from the chess viewers, because one of the things they were afraid it would do is it would take away from the human way to describe the position, which is often more educational, which is true, right? Right. The way like I would describe the position and what you can learn from it is more instructive than just seeing the eval +2.76, right? But I think as we learned that it didn't have to change anything about how we described it, and if anything, at times it helped guide us where we actually were able to draw out information. Why does the computer think it's better? Well, let me explain. We're like almost like the engine eval leads the way and helps the humans know what to talk about. And recently, we kind of made this eval bar smaller. It used to be a little bit bigger and fatter. And now we've gotten tons of feedback from people that they don't want it. They want the big eval bar back. So we're trying to figure out the right balance to bring it, you know, make it a little larger again, like make it a little more obvious, because now people are like, they want complete information. You know, chess is a complete information game, and fighting games are not, right? Like it's the complete opposite, of where you don't have the overall full take of everything that's going on. So queen to D2, and you can see white is better for the reasons I said, right? So this goes back to the permanent features. The center and the bishop pair are going to unleash. I'm going to kick this knight, and all these crazy checkmate ideas you had go backwards. You got to back it up. White's going to develop one aggressively, bring the queen out, like bring the other bishop out. The rook has this open file here. What did I say? You're threatening knight to D5. Yeah, it's a huge forking problem. That is a problem. It's funny because I'm happy my brain all was thinking about was moving the knight to that square. I was like, man, yeah, that is the square. I remember us talking about that, so I'm happy that I remembered. He probably won't even know that trick, but most likely, like I said, you'll do this and you'll play D4 and it'll be like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'll just take it and take. And I already showed you that if you move the knight, you're busted. Yeah. But what if he doesn't move the knight? Well, even if he like defends the knight, which is better, you can do a couple things. You can get super aggressive and try to kick the knight and take it by force. I would say that's not even the best idea. Like just developing the bishop to E2. Yeah. I was going to say, I feel like you have such a good position that when your position is good, from my experience playing, you should just keep developing into like a better position, right? Yeah. Squeeze it. Bishop E2. You're going to Rekharovka kingside
cackle. Then you can play f4. You've also got the other bishop coming out. So like if they play knight f6, moves like bishop to g5 are super strong. You're pinning the knight to the queen. You could castle both ways now. You're popping ponies all over the board in d5, right? You've got f4 coming. So these are all the things I'm giving you right now. Remember, as a map, right? I can't tell you the specific paths to take. You're kind of looking at the forest through the trees, right? You're looking at the big picture, and you're better here. If he doesn't play bishop c5 and let us go for this stuff, then he's playing moves like knight f6 that are just giving you natural moves. Play bishop b5, get castled, and like I said, you're either opening the center or you're playing for a pawn chain that you can then attack on that side of the board and winning. So now let's look at the other line. He might play d6. Go ahead and play white. Man,
D6.
I don't know how you feel, but this might be the greatest ever chess lesson of all time. Like that's how this feels right now.
In my experience of the 2 chess lessons I've had, it's definitely in the top 2.
Okay, so now you play d4, you remember, and I think he's going to play the Pirc. So this is where we need to focus, really.
If I remember, which I think I remember, it's the knight defense, right?
Right, and remember what I said. Never pull a rabbit out of the hat.
Yeah.
Trust your critical thinking. Like, what did he literally do with this move? What was the literal idea?
Yeah, just attack the knight. Yeah, or the attack the pawn.
So you defend it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, because all the moves we're giving you are not memorized. I'm not asking you to ever do something that doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't have a why. So now he plays g6, and he's not threatening anything concrete, so you can get back to development.
Man, see, this is the part where I'm gonna have to go back and think about it and drill it into my muscle memory. Yeah,
I'm gonna let you go through the thought process, but you want to get your pieces out, right? Your king side pieces, your knight and your bishop. So what's the right order to do that?
Yeah, it should be the knight then.
Right, and what concept did I say that I went on that tangent about?
Yeah, knights before bishops, and also
knights before bishops.
In my brain, I want this pawn to go forward, so this is useful to have anyway, right? So that just makes sense to me.
Okay, so you bring the knight out. I play bishop g7, and your move.
I'm pushing.
So I'm glad you did that because that's actually a mistake. That's what the guy did against Sam in the game.
That's right. Yeah.
And the reason was now after takes, he can trade queens.
Yeah.
And you're not in a position to take with an effective piece like the rook. You want the rook to be able to take.
That's right.
You got to take with the knight.
Yeah.
By the way, because taking with the king would allow this move, knight g4. And once again, that is a fork you want nothing to do with. Right. Hitting f2 and e5, he's going to win a pawn. Instead, you're continuing to get developed and preparing for that idea.
I think it was a bishop move, but I don't remember which one. Damn, I feel like I had it a minute ago, and now it's just like gone out of my head. It happened so fast. I gotta watch this back later today.
We've done a lot of stuff here today.
My instinct is that I should develop the bishop, but I don't know where or why.
Okay, so you want to get the bishop out.
Like, yeah, and I think
this point,
in my head, the most obvious square is either c4 or c5, but I remember we talked about c5 in the other opening, so c4 is what makes sense to me.
Very good. Go for it. And I'm actually going to say, even if you don't get the best line with the trap I showed you with the e5, e6 thing, by the way, that's how we remember the bishop being here, is we try to remember our big picture goal of that diagonal, and then you'll remember it. But what I want to say is, even if you forgot, a move like bishop e2 is also incredibly good here. Just simple. Like, just get the bishop to a square, get castled, and you're still in a great position with a good center, potential threats of pushing the pawn, and you're okay. Is it as dangerous or effective as bishop c4? No, but this is not the end of the world. Like, this is not judgment town if you forgot it.
This makes more sense to me now. Looking at it again, it's starting to come back into my brain.
So bishop c4, he's going to cackle.
And then I do the same thing.
Booyah. And now remember the blunder that he actually played, right? The prophecy that I laid out. Exactly. If he plays this move, the prophecy is real. The prophecy lives.
Yeah, and then I'm pushing, right?
Yep. You're all over it. Takes.
And then I take with the knight.
Well,
actually, I guess I could take with the pawn. Yeah, I could take with the pawn instead, yeah. And then I have the queen on that file. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. You don't want to help him because these knights are actually wrestling each other for useful squares right now.
Yeah. Dang, it's the retweet button on Twitter. I never noticed that.
So you don't want the retweet.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's ironic or not, but you don't really want the retweet there because the knights are wrestling each other for squares. The retweet would work if it wasn't for the fact that the ponies are about to get kicked around. Like if white makes a random move and black gets e5, and let's say now white like closes the center or something. Now the retweet is solid. The idea is the knights protect each other, they reinforce squares, and then they can always support each other with either plan. Like if this knight goes here, this knight can back him up. Or if this knight moves to attack in the direction of the pawns, like I said, as a concept with F5, you have an option for both of these knights to eventually like come back to the king side.
Right.
And so the retweet can be solid, but in this situation with the center opening up, it means they're wrestling each other for squares, and it's bad. They have to back up, and here comes the boom. Boom goes the dynamite on c4. Oh my god, I just did it. I should walk out. That is the pun.
The boom goes the dynamite on c4. I gotta remember that.
And if takes, you have knight to g5.
Yeah, looks good.
So we've reviewed that concept, and let's do it again. So we're gonna help you remember. You go ahead and play white again, and we're gonna reinforce the moves. I got these AirPod Pros so they don't come out of your ears, but they keep coming out of my ears. It's like, when can I get a headphone that stays in my ear?
You know, that is a great. These earbuds I have are real nasty. I do not like. I feel like the way they slot into my ear, they literally always fall out. I turn my head and they just fly out. So you know, I'm right there with you. Okay.
Knight f3, bishop g7.
This move.
Okay, bishop c4, cackles. And so remember, knight bd7. If he plays this move, what are you going to play?
I'm going to play the e5 pawn.
E5, you're going to punch him, knockout. Yeah. It would be like knight bd7, and then it would go Ryu kick. Like that would be hilarious. Right. That'd be hilarious.
You know, that's exactly what's going to happen. Yeah.
But let's say he doesn't. Let's say he tries to do like a Blanca rollerball.
Damn, you know what's funny is his ball is called like Rolling Crush. But
really,
I don't know the move names. Me and everybody else literally just call it the Blanca ball.
Regardless of who ends up winning this event, Tournament Arc 2, I'm waiting to see which like community, the FGC or the anime community, shows up in force, like in chat and viewers, and which one makes more memes.
The anime community is like undefeated. I feel like there's no way to stop them.
But in terms of like the Twitch time zone and the Twitch audience, is the anime community as big as the FGC? I'm asking. I don't know.
That's a good question, because it is in the middle of the day, and as you know, weebs cannot get out of bed before like 5 p.m.
Even alive before 2 p.m. Pacific?
Yeah.
I feel like the fighting game community could be a little more active in chat for this upcoming event. It'd be funny. But remember, this was super useful for those who just tuned in. This is not a waste of our time, because we looked at ESAM's games, and the two moves he's played here are knight bd7, which is bad. We're gonna crush the retweet. And if they do the Blanca ball, remember what to do here?
In my head, it feels wrong just to take, because then the knight takes and then the queen trade happens, right? And I don't want that to happen.
No, but in this particular position, let's first like do the literal counting. Like it's like the literal, why did they go there? What are they attacking? What's the count on e5? Like who has more attackers? Who has more defenders?
I have more attackers here, right? If I, so like I would take, and then he takes my pawn back, and then my knight takes.
And at the end of that line, one of the key points we pointed out is that if you visualize your knight here and your bishop here, they're ganging up on this f7 pawn.
Yeah.
So the key tactic I showed you was the reason this tactic works for black in a lot of openings, if we forget that for a second, is that if takes and takes, they unleash this bishop and they win their piece back, and they've actually made out well. They've got a very good position with a bishop in the center of the board.
Right.
And so, but the trick in this line where Sam played it, it's not good if you remember to trade queens first, deflecting the rook from defending this pawn.
Yeah.
And now you take. Now, if they take here, you're crushing them with knight takes f7.
Right. And then he immediately moves, and then we can take the rook, or whatever he does, we're in a good spot.
Yeah, you've got all kinds of good stuff happening here. I want to show you one really important thing when you're black, so that you don't fall for any like crazy traps. And we can't end the lesson until we do that. But go ahead and play white one more time.
Sure.
I wish we had done more lessons before your tournament. I feel like I could have just brought your I feel like we could have just like, like KO anime.
Well,
like we could basically kill the genre. We could kill anime.
That would, first of all, that is incredibly powerful. But second of all, as long as I'm not immediately out of the tournament, so if I win one of the matches this weekend, then I should be in for the next time I play, and then we can do plenty of lessons. You just have to hope that I don't lose both matches immediately.
I mean, with good opening prep and someone who's got their game on, anybody from like starting out chess to 1200 is capable of winning. And that's just because, you guys are executing on concepts. And I've seen people in like 10 games go from 700 to like 1200 strength, just like overnight, because they just start doing a couple things like, why did my opponent go there? Thinking about, these like pawn structure tips I gave you, swimming with the river. And all of a sudden, you're reading the language of the board instead of it being like, you look at a book that's French, if you don't speak French, and you see there's a pattern, but you're not reading it. You read English, you know how to read it. Like you're reading multiple words at a time, right? It like flows from the page, right? Yeah. And I think chess is much more comparable to understanding a language than it is to actually memorizing math equations.
Right.
And people don't realize that. Okay, so you play e4, I'll play d6.
Yeah.
Okay, so
whoops,
I play here.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Remember, why did I go there?
Yeah,
why did I play knight f6?
To attack this pawn, yeah.
So you want to go back? Go ahead. All right, I backed up. Go ahead. You can.
Yeah, this knight.
Nice.
And then this knight, yeah.
Okay, a knight f3, bishop g7.
Yes, and then I put my bishop here.
Rakrovka, you have very much castles. Very nice. Okay, I go here. How you crush me?
Yeah, pushing.
Look at you.
And then we're taking.
Yes, because you don't want to help them. Don't unretweet.
Once you retweeted it, it's on the timeline.
It's out there, right? Don't do it. Don't help them out. Don't help them trade. I'm gonna make an even worse move than knight e8 if I go here. And now when you push.
Oh yeah, you just push up.
Right, and now if I take it, now you can take with the bishop. We see that eval bar just shoot way up because white's just crushing. Now if you take with check, you're actually winning my knight full for it.
Damn, he's good. Yeah, that is so useful. It's funny because I think like as a new chess player, my brain is always like, okay, my pawns are out there living their best life. Now I'm supposed to like develop. So the idea of just like continuing to push is very like, it's not second nature. You know what I mean? So this makes a lot of sense.
Right. I know we got into a lot of stuff today, but one of the first things I highlighted, let's not forget it, which is that if you looked at this in our opening Explorer, which by the way, spend tomorrow, look at some more of his games. I don't think you should overwhelm your brain. We've done a lot here, and I think we've got a pretty good plan. But the concept I was saying is one of the most dangerous ways to play against the Pirc is the Austrian, which is 2 pawns in the center trying to punch e5 through.
Yeah.
And what I was saying is I don't want you to play this line because it's risky. There's a lot of theory here if you don't know what you're doing with an open king. But conceptually, this is the move we're trying to remember, right?
Right.
And so when we're in this line, it kind of makes sense. As we get developed, we're going to remember this is our threat, right? To punch open. So we've looked at e5, which is bad, because you'll take, trade queens, and then shake and bake on e5, where you've got f7 hanging. So he's in trouble.
Yeah.
If he plays the retweet, you'll punch him out. And if he plays bishop g4 to pin the knight, you can play h3 and get the bishop pair and pick it off.
Yeah.
Now there are other moves here. He could play knight to c6 even. This is better than the retweet because if you play e5 now, he actually still has that square to go to. He wasn't blocking himself off. So like he could trade queens and then move his knight to even a square like this. And this is very different because his bishop isn't blocked, right, by the knight here. So he's actually in a pretty good spot. So if he plays knight c6, you may not want to go e5. Instead, you might just keep your big center and be happy that you know how to use it. Just play bishop g5. Put the queen up, put your rooks in the center, right? Bring the rooks in. At some point, you're going to look to do something nasty here, depending on what happens.
The evaluation thing, like looking through all the moves to me is so cool because I was like talking about this the other day, but what I like about this, about chess.com and like chess in general is after every match, I always go back and I'm like, okay, there was something that I didn't know what to do, right? Like there was like some situation where I was like, I don't know what the hell is happening here and it's bothering me. And like, of course, the computer's like, hey, you made 87 wrong moves. You want to talk about it? I'm like, no. we're going to the part where I didn't know what to do and we're going to take like, this is the important part. We'll figure this out and then go on. Because there's so much to learn, I feel like the nice thing is that you can start anywhere, and I think all the stuff you picked is really useful, especially, given who I'm playing, but just in general, the ideas and concepts I think are really, really helpful. So even if, things go sour on Friday, I feel super confident overall just about learning the game and understanding what's happening.
Cool. Let me show you quickly the one major thing that can go wrong for you when you're black. So now we're backing up. So the one thing I want to make sure you don't get busted on quickly is if he plays e4, what are you going to play here? You would probably play e5.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. What if I play queen h5, attacking your pawn on e5 early?
I would move the knight to defend it.
And then I play bishop to c4. And what would you do here?
That's a good question. I would move this knight here.
Okay.
Oh, that seems bad.
And
Yeah.
as soon as
Immediately
you
went
play
bad.
that, the eval bar shows you, and that's how
Yeah.
we become a PogChamps meme right there.
Oh,
Queen
okay.
takes F7, checkmate.
Oh, that makes sense.
And
Yeah, okay.
and so what I just showed you, I wasn't trying to embarrass you or anything. I was trying to show you what you just did was the most logical thing to do, and this is why the scholar's mate still lives. You just did a bunch of natural things.
Yeah.
I mean, take us through the thought process. You're like, I play E5, that's the best move.
Right.
He attacks my pawn. Oh, sorry, he attacks my pawn with Queen H5.
So
and I defend the pawn. What the freak you want from me? He attacks here, but guess what? His queen is loose, so I'm gonna go get the lady. Uh-oh, I forgot the back door. Queen takes F7, and I'm checkmated.
The other thing I was thinking about doing was moving the pawn to G6. Is that a better move against it?
Way better move. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I was trying to defend, but yeah, I was trying to hit the queen, but I was unsure if it was better to move the pawn or the knight, which makes more sense, yeah. There's lots of things in fighting games where, like, we call them scrub killers. They're just, like, things that, I think is, the chess example of it, which is one of those things where, like, if you don't know what's happening, it's incredibly hard to stop, right? Like, you're just like, oh, I don't know what this is. And then all of a sudden the match is over and you're like, I hate this game. This game's dumb. Chess is just, nobody good plays chess. These guys all suck. Like, you just get grumpy, you know? Like, it is, yeah, knowledge checks, that's another good word for it. But they're like things that when you're new seem like the most you're like, how could this be? This is so dumb. And then you see it once and then you learn how to beat it and you're like, okay, that'll never happen again.
It's part of the learning curve a little bit, right? And so G6 is exactly what you do. Now they'll try one more time with Queen F3. So they're threatening one more time.
I see.
To come and get you. And now what would you do?
That's a great question. Now you should probably move the knight up, right? Yeah. Because it's defended. Immediately, once you get this, your position is already like moments away from being very good. You've got threats of knight to d4, which again is a forking problem, but also just natural moves. You're playing bishop g7 because they gave you the free tempo on the queen. So you're developing your bishop. You're going to get castled, and everybody's safe. By the way, once you play G6, even if you're not someone who normally fianchettos, like you're more used to these openings where the bishop comes out here. Yeah.
Once you play G6, you almost always need to put the bishop there. You don't want to make holes around your king side and not fill them with pieces.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you're in a great spot. If they're really stubborn, even though you've defended the mate and they slide the queen over for the battery, because they're really stubborn and not going to give it up. There's actually several moves here. You can play the simple move, queen to e7, and just defend the pawn. And now you're going back to fianchetto. You're going to play knight to d4, and you're in a great position. But even better, if you remember it, is to actually just play knight d4 right away and call their bluff. They take with check, and then you play here, and suddenly their queen is overloaded, right? This is like the mom who takes like 7 kids to the playground, and she can't deal with everyone. And you see that one kid on the monkey bars, and you're like, he's too little to be on the monkey bars. What's she gonna do? She's got to deal with this kid, right? And then you win, forking, and you can't guard the bishop. So let's do it again. You play black again. Let's see if you can defend it a second time.
Sure.
Uh-oh.
Oh, wait, it was knight first. Yeah, it was knight first.
I'm so glad we did it again.
Yeah,
now you played it too soon.
Yeah.
Now he can take.
Yeah, exactly. So it's supposed to be knight first, and then, because then the rook gets taken. It's knight first, then pawn. That makes sense.
So go ahead. Knight first. Go here.
Then the pawn goes here. Yeah.
Booyah. I go one more time.
Yeah, and then... yeah, we have to just defend this square, right? So then the knight comes out.
Booyah. And then the mom takes too many kids to the park.
Yeah, and then we can push our knight.
Booyah. Take. And you just come up.
Yeah, you move him up. Yeah.
Okay, very good. What we have if we have this bishop come here first? Now we hit this pawn. You actually have options here. You can play both cones chest, which is knight c6, or you also have ideas of this move first. Here, you hit pawn, and you prevent the lady from coming to h5. Now you will capture her and win immediately.
I see.
So, if they play bishop to c4 first, before bringing the queen out, you have very good ideas. Okay? Very nice.
Makes sense. Perfect.
You're welcome, chess.com comrades.
Yeah, that was excellent. I feel like the lesson went... You know what's funny is everybody was like, it's going to be sick. And I was like, all right, I'll be the judge of that. And I think it went awesome. Yeah, I learned a ton of stuff.
I'm super pumped. I'm going to be watching as a fan because Aaron doesn't let me do commentary for this one.
Damn.
So this was a very specific we were able to pinpoint some things for you to do as white against his Pircs that I feel really good about. And literally, like, if he doesn't become aware of this information, you have a very good chance to deliver the KO. And good luck, man. Let's go. Let's go beat Sam. And I love you. I didn't know you are Sam. Like, good. I love you, buddy. Like, good talk. Glad we could talk this out. But I'm rooting for Sajam.
Hell yeah, much appreciated. Well, thanks for the lesson. I really do appreciate it. It was awesome. All right, what up there, chat room? You guys still have me here? If no one's got me, the chat's got me. What up there, gamers? That was sick, right? I'm not the only one here who thinks that was super tight, right? You guys enjoy that? I know I didn't get to pay as much attention to you as I normally do, but that was really cool. So I don't know much about chess, you know? I'm new in town. But I do know that I've been learning. I've just been playing games. I've only played like 9 games or something so far, some really small number. And I think it's really fun so far. And I think that there's a lot of like, you know, I spent a lot of time teaching you guys how to play fighting games or talking about fighting games, doing fighting game analysis. So learning something that's just totally different is really fun because I look at the tools to learn and I get to compare them to ours. In fighting games, it's like, finding good information is often very difficult, right? Fighting someone who's like got the information you need in like a digestible way is tough. But for chess, I found so many videos so quickly and they were all so good that I was like, man, this is kind of fucked up actually. By comparison, I'm just like, damn, they really got some good stuff on here. Dude, the puzzles, I love chess puzzles. I think if you don't know, the chess puzzles literally just put you in a scenario and they're like, hey, make the best moves possible. And as you make the best moves, your rating goes up or down, whether you do them correct or not. I feel like fighting games having some kind of situation like this would be so useful. There's so many good things in chess.com and like resources I found in general is like out of control. Yeah, you mentioned Gotham Chess, right? So I just looked up like what's an opening, right? Because, you know, I figured like I'm always gonna play the beginning of the game, correct? And he had a video that was like, hey, this is what you should do if you're a beginner. Hey, this is what you should do if you're experienced. Hey, this is what you should do if you're you know, like a really strong player. And it was like an 8-minute video that was like, these are all the basic concepts and this is what you're trying to do in all of them. And I was like, dude, perfect. Dude, you look huge. I was like, this is very useful. Yeah, I think a lot of people have cool chess content like that. I've also never done a chess lesson until this week, or honestly, I'm not sure if I've done a lesson for anything ever. Maybe I don't think I've had like lessons like this, personalized lessons, especially ever, and they were both so wonderful. So comparatively, you know, it's pretty good. I'm curious, from like a fighting game player's perspective, what did you think about watching a lesson? A lot of people have asked me to do lessons before, right? My thought process, and I assume a lot of people are the same way, is that in my experience teaching, I like teaching broad general ideas that everybody can take away rather than trying to do like some really specific thing that like only helps one person, right? But maybe today, everything that was taught was really useful to me and to you guys. And the funny thing is, you know, like during that lesson and I think after, right? It's pretty clear my brain got overloaded with all the info. It was there, but I just needed a second to remember it and go over it, right? I think it's important to know that in fighting games, it's not as obvious when your brain gets overloaded. If I'm overloaded, then I'm still playing the game and hitting people. But in chess, I'm literally like, I don't even know what piece I don't remember what piece to move. I'm like, okay, we just went over this. I gotta remember. It's just really funny to compare the difference in like my brain being fried in both situations. Yeah, fighting games are so fast that you don't have time to realize how overloaded you are, right? The amount of decisions per second that you have to make is like so unnaturally taxing on a human. That was cool. That was a fun lesson. I was really unsure of what to expect, but like I said, Ryan said it in the chat, and literally so did everybody else. Like, everybody was like, Danny is the greatest human of all time. You're gonna love him. He's fucking sick. And I was like, all right, everybody calm down. And it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought that lesson was tight. I can feel that my brain needs a break. It's a little mushy, which is good. I think 2 hours was probably the right time. I think I just haven't played a lot of matches, and that's probably the next thing to do. But I need to do it when my brain is less mushy. Right now is probably not a good time. It was funny because during the lesson, he said something like, okay, you want to do this, right? You want to do this when this happens. He's like, of course, there's like exceptions where sometimes you don't want to do this and you want to do this instead. And it was so funny because it reminded me of explaining fighting games to someone and you're like, hey, you know, when you block this move, it's punishable. Well, okay, it is punishable, but sometimes if it's like spaced out really well, it's not punishable in the same way. But when you blog this movie, you shouldn't challenge no matter what. And like, you should, it's funny because if you say something like that's generally always true, like 85, 90% of the time, there will always be like somebody who's like, but what about this 10% time where this happens? And you're like, okay, there's an outlier in this 10% time where this happens, but 90% of the time we're going to do this. And then someone's just like, but what if? And you're like, well, okay, let's just do this. Trust me, follow me, all right? I need you on my side. Listen. I need to play Soul. Good old, that's like a brain smoothie. That's like soothing for my, it's like for my pores. I'm like, ah. If I play Nagoriyuki, like, you know, my brain gets no workout. If I play Soul, he's so complex, divine. He's got like a hint of nuttiness. Well, how do people describe like coffee? Kind of like a chocolatey note I'm picking up there.